Hello my friends and welcome! This video combines all 4 parts of this absolutely insane playthrough. Now if you've already seen up to part 3, feel free to skip to the last one using the chapters in the description. And if you haven't, well, I hope you enjoy. Hello my friends and welcome to what is most likely the hardest challenge in Subnautica I have ever attempted. This is Subnautica Deathrun Remade, a mod that, quote, turns Subnautica into a difficult roguelike experience that challenges you to use everything you know about the game to survive. In simple terms, this mod adds a bunch of elements into the game that make it considerably more difficult, and in some ways tedious, in order to test just how skilled you are at the game and how much you know about it and how much patience you have. Now, to give you a brief overview of some of the things it adds, we have poisonous atmosphere.
Are you choking?
This means you cannot breathe on the surface unless you either use a floating air pump or you have a special device that's only unlocked later. The nitrogen accumulation and decompression sickness, i.e. when surfacing, you have to do it slowly so that the nitrogen buildup does not hurt you. We have the falling life pod, so your life pod can spawn randomly in a variety of locations and then it will sink to the bottom. We have a lethal quantum detonation when the Aurora explodes. Unless you're below a certain depth to take shelter, you will die from the explosion. The radioactive fallout is much increased. Radiation from the ship will also spread far and wide quickly. Oh, and diving too deep is also dangerous now because without a proper suit, you will get crushed. But no worries, because the wildlife is also much more aggressive, so they will charge you from a friggin' mile away, and they also do increased damage. Oh, and did I mention we're playing by hardcore rules? So if you die, that's it. Run over. You have to start from the beginning. And the recipes for just about everything have been massively expanded, with the requirements being much higher. This is gonna be so much fun. So why don't you grab some popcorn, tuck in, because this is gonna be one heck of an episode, and let's see what we can do. Alright guys, let's freaking do this. Start far from kelp. Okay, I don't know if that's good or bad. Oh, and we're already sinking. That's great. It seems that... Oh, so you can't open it before the life pod hits the bottom. I'm just gonna take everything. I have no idea what I will need, but I presume a lot. We still have oxygen in here, which is good. What on earth is this start? Oh, wow. Let's farm. This is not an ideal spot to be. I also have to take note of the amount of nitrogen and how fast I am ascending. God, this is disorienting. What's the first thing to make? Okay, I reckon we will need a knife to begin. So I'll need some silicone rubber, but that is pretty far. Yeah, I don't think I can make it to a kelp forest. The surface air is not breathable, so I can't actually, you know, surface and go that way. I have to be super careful, plus my oxygen is really friggin' low right now. Now, as long as I stay on about the same level, the nitrogen buildup should not become a problem. Okay, so I can make a scanner with these two, that's definitely a good choice. Might as well make it. Oh yeah, okay, so we don't start with a battery. That's lovely. Okay, what do I need for a battery? Man, I'm gonna need some mushrooms. Might as well exit both ways so that I have them unlocked already. Okay, so let's hope this gives us copper. Jesus Christ, I have so little oxygen, man. Oh my god, this is stressful. Is my life pod even regenning power? Oh crap, okay, so we have to be able to fix it real quick for it to start regenerating power. Oh god, I'm gonna need cave sulfur. How the heck am I gonna get... Oh, it is regenerating power, it's just super slow. Why did I sign up for this? Okay, now these batteries, they only give us 75 charge, not the usual 100, but you know, it's better than nothing. I need more oxygen, 100%, that is the next thing. 3 titanium, okay, we can get that. I want to really be careful not to dive too deep and too steep, because I will have to swim that distance back up. Again, going down at this depth should be fine. At deeper depths, I will be getting crushed. But at this level, it should be okay. Alright, it's a voiceover bacon with you from now on. Now, I was feeling pretty good about things, and I started exploring the place with my scanner to gather a bunch of blueprints such as the laser cutter. You might notice that these require a lot more scans than they normally would, and this is a common trend that will continue with everything. I managed to craft myself an O2 tank, which would massively help me with exploration. So far things weren't too bad. I was able to get enough food and water in the vicinity of my life pod to survive, but it certainly wasn't pleasant, knowing I couldn't surface or surface very fast. Because I wanted to be able to breathe on the surface, I made myself the pump and the pipes associated with it that would kind of allow me to bring some breathable air to just about any place as long as I had them on me. Also, the lack of power was really becoming annoying. I knew this life pod would need fixing fast. I decided to quickly go test out my new filtration system, but of course, I had to be very slow on the ascent because the nitrogen buildup was becoming a real problem, especially whenever going straight up. I also made myself a knife, and with my new equipment, I decided to go on a hunt. I would be hunting for what is probably one of the most hated creatures out there, the crash fish. And that's because I needed their cave sulfur. Now also, you might notice that I am still breathing on the surface, and that's because the surface poisoning only starts once the ship explodes. I never realized how difficult it actually is to find crash fish, but for some reason, the one time you're looking for them, they seem to all just vanish. But it's those times when you're not looking for them that they're suddenly around every corner. The pipe system was likely working fine, it was just a bit of a hassle to always, put it out and pick it back up, and this would become much more tedious later in the run. Finally, at last, I managed to find one crashfish plant, and with that, I got me some cave sulfur. Diving back to the life pod, I finally had a repair tool. You can also notice here that new things are crafted without a battery, so I had to reuse whatever batteries I had and unload and reload things, but with this, I was finally able to fix the life pod. This causes it to rotate back up. Unfortunately, not float to the surface, but at least I believe it will now generate power a bit faster. I quickly built myself a pair of fins to swim a bit quicker, and then I wanted to get me a high-capacity tank. That wasn't really too difficult, the materials were readily available everywhere, so before long, I had it. So far, things were going great. And then the dreaded message pops up. The drive core would explode in just over 8 minutes, and if I wasn't at least 100 meters deep, I would be toast. Luckily, the position in which my life pod landed was actually quite nice here, because I was right next to the entrance into the jelly shroom caves. These go way deeper than 100 meters, so I figured I would be safe in there. However, I would need to be able to stay at that depth all throughout the explosion, which would mean some more air would need to get pumped down there. I was gathering up a bunch of resources, enjoying the last few moments that I would be able to breathe on the surface. I was dodging the super annoying biter. I can really tell, by the way, that the aggression had been increased. And I built these pipes all the way down into kind of just past the lip of the entrance. I also found this shark inside of a life pod, which I guess that tells you what happened to the occupants. But at last, the explosion was here. With 12 seconds left, I dove nice and deep, and with my improved oxygen tanks, I was fairly confident I'd be able to survive down here. Now, the explosion did push me all the way up against the wall, but luckily, I was safe. And I got the radiation suit unlocked, which is very good because I would be needing it stat. I slowly emerged back up, and this was kind of where it dawned on me that surface air would no longer be available for me. Now, I wanted to go deeper into the jelly shroom caves. The problem is, for some reason, it wasn't letting me build my pipes that deep. Because of how slow you have to ascend up, I wasn't actually able to really spend as long down there as I'd want, because it would take at least 3 times as long to go back up than it did to go down. You can also see that approaching the surface has now caused the unfortunate problem of radiation. Yep, that's right, without a radiation suit, I would no longer even be able to surface, which made my priorities pretty simple at this point. Built the friggin' suit. I built this pretty wild system of pipes that would help me get around the map without having to go closer to the surface, at least in the immediate vicinity of the life pod. Most importantly, to the nearest kelp forest, which would provide some of the materials needed for my radiation suit. I also scanned some more of the 12 required fragments for the sea moth. That's just criminal, by the way. And got myself the creepvine samples I needed. With that, I was finally able to get the radiation suit on, which would mean I would be able to move around the map freely. But of course, it still wouldn't let me breathe on the surface anyway. To test it out, I decided to swim up, and rest assured, I was able to stay on the surface. But as the message very clearly says, that wouldn't really help me much. From now on, wherever I would swim, I would always need to have the air pump and the pipes on me so that I could, take a breath of fresh air. I decided to try exploring this wreck a little bit, built the pipes down there, and set about scanning some stuff and collecting materials. I was getting harassed by some brain-damaged sharks, but overall, it didn't go too bad. I decided to try my luck again at the Jelly Shroom Cave, because I specifically needed magnetite. Now, this trip proved to be very successful, as long as I stayed close to the entrance. With all of this farming, I was able to build the habitat builder, which would become very handy since I was getting really annoyed by the limited power reserves of the life pod. Here you can also see some of the absolutely insane crafting requirements, like to build a battery you need a freaking diamond, which okay, as if my Altera debt wasn't high enough, but fine. And at last, I set out to explore the map a little bit and to build myself a new home. I picked the edge of the kelp forest pretty close to the Aurora because I wanted to be basically in between a bunch of biomes. I would have the mountain islands to one side, kelp forest behind me, a bunch of grassy plateaus to my right, and then in front of me, I'd have the bulb zone and the mushroom forest. I hope you guys like this place, because you're gonna be seeing it a lot. This also begins the lovely trend of pipes absolutely bugging the heck out. Don't know why that happens. And with the help of one solar panel, I was able to actually get power to the base, which felt like a pretty big accomplishment. I finally had another place outside of the life pod where I could chill. I took the time to scan some of the Cyclops fragments. Good thing I don't need a billion of them. And then I set about building some of the basic stuff you would need for your habitat. You might also be noticing the ever-present radiation warning in the top right of my screen. Yeah, this is not really gonna go away anytime soon. As the radiation spreads, this entire area will soon be covered, and from that point it will just be constant Chernobyl filter. I went in to explore LifePod 3, got the blueprint for a compass, I was able to build me a fabricator, and another solar panel, which would help give me some more power to the base. And with a locker in place, things were looking pretty good. I named the locker Pipe, as you do, and then I set about exploring the kelp forest nearby a little bit and scanning a bunch of blueprints. I managed to unlock the mobile vehicle bay, which was a big step. Don't even get me started on the build requirements though. I also continued using a pretty smart strategy I adopted earlier, which was to always carry a spare oxygen tank that was full of air, and so if I ever started running out, I could just swap to it and get an extra 30 seconds. Now you can see I'm on the edge of the floating islands, and I also want to point out at this point that I was becoming quite scared to explore far from the safe areas because due to the heightened aggression, I've seen clips of people being charged by Reapers from freaking kilometers away. The Reaper just suddenly appears and it does not give up. I also managed to get me the laser cutter, which was super cool. And then I tried exploring this particular wreck. As per usual, exploring these is freaking scary. Even more so when you can't really surface as fast as you'd like. But I didn't find anything too crazy in there. By the way, if it appears to you that at this point you cannot see anything, trust me, it's the exact same for me. At night, with the constant radiation effect on, I could not see jack. It got to the point where I had to actually make the game quite a bit brighter later to be able to even move and function. Now here I was doing something probably quite stupid. I decided to go into the bulb zone because I would need some of the materials. And while I did make it down there, not only was I not finding nearly enough of the materials I needed, I was also in the constant danger of being attacked by amp eels. And of course drowning. And let me tell you, finding where exactly you left the air pipe in the middle of the night is freaking difficult. During the day I was able to explore the area a bit better, but it was still freakishly difficult and genuinely made me feel super on edge, like I was about to die any second. I also, somewhat foolishly, decided to try exploring this wreck, which is in the middle of the bulb zone. I was honestly pushing way below the depth I should be at this point. I was not nearly well enough equipped to be down here, but at least I got the exterior grow bed bed, which would definitely come in handy later. I also managed to get the blueprint for the lightweight high-capacity tank, which sounds like it will come in handy. And after getting harassed by bone sharks, I decided to just dip out of there, because the chance of me drowning inside was just becoming very, very high at this point. Here, I decided to actually go back to the shallows and gather up some simpler materials, as well as get some fragments that I didn't get the first time around, such as trying to get the beacon. I managed to get the sea glide, which would come in super handy later. Not for ascending, mind you, but at least for moving around. Using the diamonds, I built myself a laser cutter, and I realized the crafting requirements for the sea glide were not actually too bad, so I could build it too. But to be able to effectively build some lithium batteries, I would need more diamonds, I would need more lithium, and these are resources that I couldn't really think of any better place to find that than the island, the mountain island to be more specific. So I went over there trying to stick as far away from that one place where the Reaper spawns as freaking possible. My butt cheeks were clenched to the max the whole time, especially hearing it roar in the distance. What was also quite annoying is that despite this being a normally fairly safe place on the surface, I still couldn't breathe out there, so I had to quickly sprint from one body of water to the next one inside. Diving down, I got myself a purple tablet, and the grind was actually going pretty well. I was able to use some of the brain corals down there to stay underwater for longer, and I was able to farm the shale outcrops down there for some good resources. You can't see it here because I started the recording too late, but a Reaper actually clipped partially through that wall in an attempt to get me from the other side of the island. I kind of just saw its tail coming back in. To say that didn't give me a lot of confidence would be a massive understatement. While on the island, I also decided to grab the other purple tablet, unlock the gun. Luckily, the air inside of the buildings is breathable, and I also got myself stabbed with a little alien needle, you know, just for good luck. But then it was back to my base, finally being able to craft a lithium battery, and using that, the lithium power cell, and combining that with a bunch of things, I had the mobile vehicle bay, which was honestly freaking awesome. I felt pretty proud of that. I deployed the mobile vehicle bay, proudly climbed onto it, realized I have no recipes available, and that was that. Now, to get the rest of the sea moth blueprint parts, I swam toward the grassy plateaus and tried farming it there. This actually proved easier than I expected, especially using a pretty long system of pipes, and there it was. Oh yeah, I also explored Lifepod 6 here. Oh yeah, I also got myself a flashlight at this point just because I couldn't see at night due to that crazy radiation effect. I started farming for the sea moth. That recipe is freaking massive, so massive even the sea emperor decided to show up. Hey, how's it going? And let me tell you, farming for it was most definitely not fun. Finding these freaking plants in the kelp forest took way longer than it realistically should have, but everything else was pretty okay since it was relatively close to where my base was, with the exception of the freaking ghost weed. This thing sucks. I was able to make a sea glide in the process, which was quite nice. Though of course it would burn through batteries like it was freaking nothing. But equipped with it, I swam back down into the bulb zone and tried to find the ghost weed there, since I knew around some edges of the biome they should spawn. Unfortunately, I couldn't find any, and this really wasn't an area where I wanted to spend a lot of time exploring. So there was only one place I could go, and that was the blood kelp zone. Staring down into the blood kelp trench made me very uneasy. I was very acutely aware that if I died, that's it for the run. But, well, pipe time it is. Being down there 200 meters deep in the dark surrounded by hyper-aggressive warpers is not exactly my idea of a great holiday, but at least I got some uranium crystals, which is pretty cool. But alas, finally I found one, struck it with my knife, and off I went. Back at my mobile vehicle base, nothing else was stopping me. As you can see, I'm very excited. I put down all of these hard-earned resources and built my first sea moth, which really felt like way more of a monumental achievement than it realistically is, at least in the vanilla game. Hopping into the sea moth, obviously it doesn't come with a power cell, which is just great, but you know, at least it was there now. I farmed for a power cell, which was not exactly fun, but with it, the sea moth would now be usable, which again felt super exciting, though for now I wouldn't exactly have many uses for it just yet. Now it was time to set off for the truly scary mission. I knew that what I really needed to do was to fix the Aurora. This would stop the crazy spread of radiation and would give me the tools I would need to make the surface air breathable again. I was also acutely aware that there are Reapers beside the Aurora, quite a few. So let me tell you that this is probably the most nervous I had been ever playing Subnautica, purely for the pressure of knowing that if I die, that's it, and I have to do all of these hours of grinding again. I managed to squeeze myself through the frame of the ship, staying as far away from the Reaper as possible. I didn't even see it, thank goodness. And then as I sprinted up toward the Aurora, I was really hoping that the inside would at least have breathable air, right? I mean, that's not a crazy assumption and hope to make, right? Newsflash, the air on the inside is not breathable. So, in a bit of a panic, getting irradiated to crap, I was trying my best to hop over some of the blockades there to make my way through. I actually failed this once. I literally had to run back out because my oxygen was just too low, jump into the water, get some air, and then run back up. Not a fun time, but I did eventually make it into water, and thank goodness I did, because it was in the very last nick of time. I made my way to the drive room using my repair tool and all the batteries I managed to pick up along the way. I was able to fix the 300 places where this engine was broken. I swear to God, they increased the number by like tenfold in this mod. The bleeders were as creepy as ever, but it wasn't too bad at this point. And at last, the air filtration system roared to life, and the drive room was fixed. This gave me the integrated filter chip, which after crafting would presumably let me breathe on the surface. While there, I also figured I might as well explore the other parts of the ship, so I made my way to the prawn bay to get as many prawn suit scans as I could. Unfortunately, unlike the base game, scanning all of the ones in here would not be enough to get me to complete the prawn suit blueprint, but it's a good start. I grabbed the most important thing, the Keep Calm Kitty poster of course, and I made my way into the captain's quarters and got myself the download for the Neptune rocket. And of course, we would not be building this for a while longer, but I just didn't want to have to do another trip here. And with all that, I returned to my base, successfully avoiding the Reaper, built myself a bed, built some more lockers, hung up the kitty poster, and honestly, I'm feeling pretty good about the progress. You see, now that I had the sea moth and the radiation would slowly be seeping away from everywhere, I would be able to dedicate more time to looking around the map and finding stuff to build. Now, I'm not sure I mentioned this in the previous episode, but exiting the sea moth at depth drains literally all of its energy. Oh my god, what is that? So yeah, this bad boy won't be getting as much use as you might think at the very start, and I quickly came right back to the trusty old pipe system. Now, the biggest reason I was going into the mushroom forest was the moon pool. I was able to quickly scan up some fragments, and while there I also grabbed a bit of the power transmitter, and got kinda lucky and also managed to snag the modification station, which was a really good progress. At last, I found the final moon pool fragment, and this bad boy was ready to be built. I can also say, I have managed to learn the layout of the mushroom forest pretty well, so I memorized where all of the brain corals were, and that allowed me to maneuver in between them without having to surface very much. Now luckily, the requirements for the moon pool weren't that crazy, and neither were the ones for the modification station, so it was time to farm. I put the Seamoth depth module in, even though I wouldn't be using the Seamoth because why not? And then it was time for a bit of remodeling. I moved the cat poster, deconstructed the hatch since I wouldn't be needing it anymore, and built myself a moon pool. This was amazing progress since I would be able to use it not just as an entrance and a place to park the vehicle, but also a way to indirectly charge all of my power cells. I also built a bed inside, not realizing that still I would not have enough place to exit it, so it wouldn't be usable here either. With that ready, I built some more solar panels on top just to have a tad bit more power, and then it was finally time to take down my Seamoth. With a 300 meter crush depth, it was no problem getting it down to the moon pool and parking it in. Backwards. Now this was awesome. Finally I could use the Seamoth to get around, which would make things a lot faster, even though of course I'd have to be very careful with how I treat this very precious vehicle. The grind for the modification station was pretty easy, and so before long, there it was in the corner of my moon pool. As you can see, got me very excited. That's because I would be able to build stuff such as this, the Ultra Glide fins that would let me swim around a ton faster, as well as the Thermal Blade, which would let me cut small fish and eat them on the spot. And with that, I set about searching for more blueprints. The next thing on my radar was the battery charger, because I had a lot of batteries and a lot of tools that would need those batteries, but no way to charge them yet. I started slicing my way through some wrecks, got a bunch of cool data boxes, and scanned a bunch of stuff. I came back to the bulb zone wreck since now I was much better equipped to explore it. And I got myself a stasis rifle fragment. These will become a headache later, but overall it wasn't super helpful. Back in my base, I decided to build up the vehicle upgrade console. The farm took me to yet another wreck. I think you're beginning to sense a pattern here. This one, for those of you that have seen part 1, is the original wreck next to my life pod. On the inside, I got the propulsion cannon, and finally found some more battery charger fragments. A little bit later, and there it was, I had the battery charger, which was freaking awesome. Back at base, I had all the materials for the upgrade console, which I promptly built. With this bad boy, I of course immediately changed the color of my Seamoth to be like the bacon stripes, and I named that bad boy Bacon Slice. I made myself a storage module, just so that the Seamoth could carry a few more items, and then built the battery charger, which again would come in super handy as a lot of my stuff was slowly running out of batteries. Now I realized that the zinc batteries unfortunately could not be charged, which is unfortunate, but oh well, we're gonna be using lithium from now on anyways. Using some more expensive resources, I built the hull reinforcement. Again, I was just very scared of losing this little bacon slice, so I wanted to give it as much protection as it could feasibly have. Now I decided to go for a bit more of a bold adventure, and I went toward the underwater islands. Here I found the deep wreck, which was completely surrounded by bone sharks that started eating away my Seamoth, so I had to park it a bit further away before delving down. But I was able to find some really good stuff, such as the prawn suit drill arm, and also some Cyclops engine fragments, which again would come into play a bit later. I was still on the hunt for more blueprints, and that took me to the sparse reef next. Now I knew this area contained a big wreck, and what I really wanted were prawn suit pieces. I got myself the reinforced diving suit, which was amazing since I would need it to dive deeper into the game, and I spent as much time exploring down there as I could. You have to remember that every time I would exit the Seamoth, it would drain a massive chunk of the battery. Because of this, I was doing my absolute best to really maximize every dive, go till I had basically exhausted either everything I could find or all of my oxygen before entering back in, because at any given point at this depth I would maybe have like 2 or 3 exits at most. From this area I decided to make a venture somewhere fun. The floating island. It was right next door, and the path to it was relatively safe, so I figured why not? Maybe for a second I could be in a place where I'm not terrified for my life every waking moment. I parked the Seamoth, and getting on dry land honestly felt really good, and being able to breathe the surface air on top of all that felt excellent. By the way, if you're curious as to how I'm breathing the surface air, I am pretty sure once you fix the ship, it becomes that way naturally, or it might be the rebreather I have. One or the other. I made my way to the Degassi bases, got some lantern fruit, which I will be planting in my own base soon. Delicious and nutritious. And of course, I scanned a bunch of stuff, got a purple tablet, and got some more blueprints. I also got stuck with this little spider, which started eating the heck out of me, and I couldn't slice it for some reason, I don't know why. I also made my way down to the teleporter. Unfortunately, I didn't have an iron cube, so this was more of just like a side track to do some sightseeing, not really anything that I could actually do here. And back in my base, I decided it was time to expand. This would finally give me a place where I could put down the bed that I could actually sleep in and pass the night. And then I built myself an indoor grow bed to be able to plant down those delicious fruits. And before you know it, the lantern fruit trees were in. Now I was still on the hunt for the prawn suit and the stasis rifle, so more wrecks it is. I was getting pretty good at exploring them at this point, sort of scanning the area first with the Seamoth, maximizing the battery power I had, and really making the most of my trips. As you can see, I was really looking through every single box, because pretty much everything I would find would at some point likely come in handy, so I didn't want to miss anything and have to come back. I got me a bunch more modules, also a few more scans for the Cyclops, and finally, at the very last, I found the final prawn suit fragment. As you can see, I was very happy about it. Now, this is a good place to take a little break and explain why on earth I'm looking for the prawn suit. Well, of course, you might understand that the prawn suit lets me go deeper into the Seamoth, but you might be thinking to yourself, well, why not just upgrade the Seamoth? Aha! Well, to upgrade the Seamoth, you need nickel ore, and to get nickel ore, you need to go pretty much to the Lost River. I don't think you can get it anywhere shallower than that. But of course, the Lost River begins at like, what is it, like 600 meters deep maybe? The Seamoth's crush depth, but MK1 is 300, not nearly enough. So I was hoping if I could build a prawn suit, it will let me go there to get more upgrades for the Seamoth. Here you can see me using a pretty smart strategy that I also adapted, which is to always carry 2 power cells with me. One would be loaded in the storage of the Seamoth, and that would let me swap it out when I ran out, and keep going again. Trying to be smart about things, I also built myself 2 exterior grow beds. These would be used for more, exotic plants that I would get from my travels, so that I wouldn't always have to keep traveling around the whole map to get them. I immediately planted some blood vines, as I knew blood oil from them would be very useful later. Now, this is the stage where I started coming up with a lot of bad ideas. I decided to try to see how close I could get to the Lost River, simply using a pipe system, because I couldn't really see any other way to get there. The reality was not far at all. Using the pipe system, I wasn't getting even close. I decided to kind of glide along the edge of the Grand Reef, look at the entrance there to see if it's maybe shallower. It wasn't. I even tried swimming around there, but yet again, as the meters on my depth gauge increased, I quickly realized that the entrance to the Lost River is way too deep for any of my current means. And as soon as I got teleported by the first warper, I essentially hard panicked and started swimming away in desperation. Trust me, this was terrifying. These things can one-shot you. And Jesus Christ, that was close. As you can see, my bad ideas brought me to this place where I had to swim in absolute panic left and right to avoid the little teleporting balls of the warpers in a desperate attempt to get back to safety. So that wouldn't work. Checking the browser requirements, which funny enough also require nickel, told me that that strategy would not work either. So the only thing that was left was the Cyclops. Maybe building that could take me down to the Lost River? So back to the Mushroom Forest I went. I swam around to another edge of the Mushroom Forest, which, eventually would lead me down to the Lost River. Saw my first amp eel, noped the heck out, but I did grab a deep shroom on the way since I knew I would need those later as well. Finally, I started finding some more Cyclops pieces, such as the hull fragments. I also found LifePod 13, which was kind of cool, I suppose. And finally, I had the hull done. Now all I needed was the Cyclops engine. This one would be tricky, but first, I came back to my base and planted some more stuff. Look at my little garden. It actually made me kind of happy to have this growing here, and it would definitely save me a lot of headaches later. I decided to finally finish scanning beacons, just because I figured later in the game I would want to use these to mark outposts and stuff. And then it was time to go to... Jesus Christ, that's a Reaper. Whoa. Needless to say, I immediately noped the heck out of there, and resumed going the way I was actually supposed to go. You see, what I was looking for was the Crag Field. But on the way, I did happen across LifePod 19, which was very nice, because this one contained the ultra high capacity tank, something I will desperately need later in the video. And at last, I found the right place. Now this was tricky because the Crag Field can get kinda deep, and I only had 300 meters to work with here. Plus, this place is absolutely full of bone sharks, which would want nothing more than to turn your Seamoth into their Friday dinner. Doing some careful maneuvering, I managed to find LifePod 7, but there wasn't really anything in there I would want that much, so I just skipped it. I did also happen across this cache down here that was kind of cool. Of course, there's no way for me to activate a teleporter inside, but at least I could use the space to wait until it turned day again, which would be very good because I needed to see where all of the dangerous things that could kill me were. And last, I managed to find some Cyclops pieces, which was very good because I was getting sick of this freaking area. But finally, there it was. With only 73 energy left, I knew I had enough for about one more exit, so I jumped out, grabbed the engine fragment, and there it was. I had the entire blueprint for the Cyclops. Now coming back to the modification station, I made myself the ultra high capacity oxygen tank. Seeing that bar fill up is just so freaking satisfying. And to make the base be a bit more effective, I also built another solar panel just to give me some more power. And to keep up with my strategy of switching between 2 oxygen tanks, I built another ultra high capacity tank because why not? And then I checked the requirements for crafting the Cyclops, and guess what they require? That's right. So here's the sitrep. To get deeper in any way, shape, or form, you need nickel. Now the only place to find nickel is deeper. So how on earth are you supposed to proceed? Well, I had an idea, but to do that, I would first need some reassurances, and one of those is that I would be able to survive a dangerous situation. So I decided to look for the stasis rifle. I dove back to the bulb zone to look for the second wreck that is deeper inside, being very careful not to stumble into the Reaper that lives in front of it. I found a wreck, very carefully parked beside it, immediately fixing my Seamoth because I just didn't want to risk anything. Inside, I found the water filtration machine, which was freaking awesome. And I also got electrocuted through the wall of the ship because all of the creatures have heightened aggression. Thank you so much. I also found the stasis rifle though, so it was a good day. Now luckily, the stasis rifle requirements weren't too bad, so I quickly built it. And then it was time to start prepping. I built a reinforced diving suit to hopefully make it through just about anything the game could throw at me. Now that there was basically no radiation left, I could put the radiation suit away. And it was time to start packing resources. Resources for what, you might ask? Well, a trip down to the Lost River. But first, I decided to actually hop into creative to figure out where I'd be going. My plan was simple: get enough resources, bring the Seamoth as close as possible, hop out of it, swim down, and build a small base as deep as I possibly could with a bioreactor inside to keep me going. Now in creative, I quickly ghosted my way over there, and I found a suitable spot down towards the skeleton of the gargantuan leviathan where I could build a multi-purpose room. And then it was time. I spent in-game days gathering resources. Everything was planned to the smallest detail. I could not afford to make any mistakes now. I made a save, filled myself up with food. You can see the full storage locker of everything I would be needing. And then I hopped in and I set off. I stopped right above the blood kelp trench, my heart beating in my chest really hard. I was really nervous at this point. Remember, if I die, that's it, run over. I ate the lantern fruit to again fill myself up as much as possible. And then you can see my perfect planning here, because as I took all of the resources I would need, it exactly filled up my inventory. I slowly took the Seamoth down into the place I had scouted out before at close to the 300-meter mark, giving myself a bit of space in case something bumped it, and then I jumped out with a deep breath and started going. This is probably the most scared I had been in this run yet. I was delving deep into dangerous territory with nothing but my wits and a sea glide to protect me. I could hear the warpers spawning around me, but my idea was to hug the walls as much as possible to hopefully keep me safe. Now actually, I was so panicked that I kind of lost my way a little bit down there, but quickly found it again. And with plenty of oxygen, I was actually feeling pretty good. Now, of course, I figured that I probably couldn't make it back to the surface at this point, but I should have everything to build up a base here and survive. I carefully dodged the crab squid. Definitely don't want to mess with those. Got to the spot I had previously scouted out, and then it was time to build. One multi-purpose room, one hatch, and inside, one bioreactor, some mushrooms for said bioreactor, and then at first, I wanted to build an indoor grow bed, but then I figured maybe a hull reinforcement would actually be more useful. And there it was. I had a freaking base in the Lost River, and it was amazing. Now with this outpost crafted, it was time to go get some good resources. Of course, I was still terrified of this place, but at least now I had a nice base of operations. First, I got some more fuel for the bioreactor to make sure I didn't run out of oxygen. Then, I decided to test out how much damage the brine would be doing to my reinforced diving suit. The answer is a heck of a lot, but I did get some crystalline sulfur. And then, at last, I started gathering the stuff I really came there for: nickel ore. As you can see, I was very excited about it. I found great success looking around for it on these walls here, being very careful not to stray too far over to the Ghost Leviathan near the head. Now, with enough resources gathered, I decided to see if I could actually make it back. So, took a deep breath and hopped out. Now, the trip back would be difficult, and it's not because of the oxygen supply, it's because of the nitrogen. Like I explained in episode 1, that meter right there shows how fast you can surface so that the nitrogen accumulation in your blood doesn't hurt you. See that ascending too quickly message that keeps constantly popping up is stopping me from going up fast. This is fine when you're working within the safe shallows, for example, but emerging from somewhere this deep, it would make things difficult. I started slowly ascending, but of course, this was quite tricky because of the freaking warpers, and oh my god, one of them just spawned right beside me. I quickly whipped out my stasis rifle. I was able to freeze the thing and kind of just keep going. I decided to ignore it and not attack it, and slowly but surely I was making my way up. Then this thing teleported me, which gave me probably the worst scare of my life. But before I could do anything else, I quickly healed up, hopped into the Seamoth, and hightailed it the heck out of there. Now back on the surface, I now had the resources to make my Seamoth be able to dive a little bit deeper. I created the MK2 module, which would let this bad boy sink down to 500 meters deep. And then I figured it might be a good idea to expand the base a little bit. Surely a water filtration machine could not possibly be a bad idea, right? Okay, well, so, you see what's happening up there is... I'm losing all the power. Literally all of the power in my base is, and it's yellow now. Okay. Alright, so on second thought, maybe I wasn't missing water that much, was I? Right, so thirsty but still determined, I decided to build a beacon instead to finally mark this base to make it a bit easier to find on my travels. I named it the Frying Pan, of course, and then I decided to check up on the prawn suit. I knew this was gonna be the next big thing I would need to build, but that bad boy is expensive. So instead, I decided to forget about it and go back to my Lost River base and improve it. I built up the resources necessary to make some storage and build an interior grow bed. So after eating some lantern fruit, I saved everything and hopped right back in. Before realizing it's the middle of the night, so I quickly parked right back up and went to bed. Good morning. I inhaled 25 more lantern fruits, and then it was time to travel back to the Lost River. Up until I realized I had forgotten something else, so I had to come right back. The suffering had begun. Right, so with all of the resources, it was now finally time to dive deeper. Now the thing is, the Seamoth still wasn't powerful enough to dive all the way down to my base, but what it could do is dive a bit closer. And yes, as I'm swimming down there right now, I did just forget all of the items I needed back in the locker on the Seamoth. We're both aware of this, except the bacon that is currently swimming down there is not. Oh, thank God I made it back. That was so freaking... Right, so I built the interior grow bed. I swam back to my Seamoth feeling like an absolute doofus. The suffering had worsened, and then I swam right back down into the Lost River, getting chased by 27 warpers. It's like they were having a convention on my butt or something. But alas, I made it back. Using all the resources, I built a fabricator in my lower base, and then the big party piece, I built me a moon pool. Now I wouldn't be able to park anything into it just yet, but soon. I deconstructed the hatch since I would no longer be needing it, and this base was getting more established by the minute. I managed to make my way back up, froze the crap out of this warper and sliced it with my heat blade, and with the base improved, I swam the heck out of there. Next on the list was some more crafting. It took quite a bit of effort and quite a bit of gathering resources, but at last, I had everything. I went up to the vehicle bay and at last clicked on the prawn suit, and there it was. And let me tell you, this felt like a massive, massive accomplishment. Wait, no, not without me, no! Prawn! Of course, because this mod was just a little bit too easy. All vehicles come without power cells, so I had to supply the one for my Seamoth, but there it was. An absolutely delicious 900 meters of crush depth. Once sparked in, I gave it the noble name of beef jerky, giving it a nice bacony orange color. And then it was time for some upgrades. The grappling arm, the drill arm, and the jets would be the first on my radar. A bit more crafting ensued, and the grappling arm was ready. A bit more time later, and the drill arm followed soon after. Luckily at this point, I was able to get resources relatively okay, at least these ones, so the crafting was going fast. I had also decided to get the efficiency module, just so I could take the thing for a really long drive without needing to recharge. Since I was annoyed of constantly not knowing if it's day or night, I also decided to build a window on my base. Now I can stare into the abyss whenever I want. And then we were right back in the blood kelp zone on another trip down. And yes, I have, yet again, forgotten all of the stuff I wanted to bring in the Seamoth. My brain could not possibly have been any smaller. Oh my god, you have got to... After that, I decided to say a little hi to the ghost boy down in the Lost River. We would be seeing him again, but not for a while. And then it was time to get some more sulfur. Now the strategy I adopted was swimming above the brine and trying to spot it from above before diving in very quickly. This way I would only take a little bit of damage, which I was able to quickly repair with some medkits. Now I'm going to be skipping through some bigger chunks here, but back in base I was able to build the jump jet upgrade. This, combined with the grappling arm, would make this thing amazingly mobile and allow me to pretty much take it anywhere without a fear of getting stuck. I decided to take it for a test run, and let me tell you, it was an absolute treat. I decided to finally take the prawn down into the Lost River, and using it, gather some more of that sulfur that was hiding from me in the brine, since of course, the prawn suit would not take any damage from it. The trip down was incredibly successful. I stood on the precipice, I hopped off, and then just fell past all of the annoying warpers down to where I needed to go. I can also say the crab squids here have been surprisingly chill so far, so fingers crossed that keeps being that way. In the Lost River base, I built myself a battery charger, so now I would basically have just about everything I needed to sustain me down here. On top of that, I also built a medkit fabricator, especially since I did so much stuff around here that would cause me little bits of damage. Having this here would be of massive help. And alas, I also built the vehicle upgrade console. This way, except for the modification station, I wouldn't really need to travel back up to the surface for pretty much anything. Now, a leech decided to bite me inside of my prawn suit, which I'm not gonna lie, like, I know this is hardcore, but it just seems really unfair. I also decided to build a reinforced wall on my base here, so you know, I didn't want this thing to fill up with water. Now, at this point, I knew I needed to do a bit of recon, so I actually hopped into creative and decided to explore the Lost River a bit further. You see, I knew that I needed to head toward the lava zones. I was pretty well established in the Lost River, but my prawn could only go 900 meters deep, so here you can actually see me checking around for depth to see just how far I could take it, and slowly, in my head, I was hatching a crazy plan. You see, I needed kyanite for pretty much everything from now on. The problem with kyanite is the exact same problem as we had with nickel. You can only get kyanite in the lava zones, but no vehicle can go into the lava zones without kyanite. Well, you know, I'd done it once before, surely I could do it again. But first, remember when I said we would not need to go back to the surface anymore? That's right. It's time to go back to the surface again. I actually found a time capsule along the way, which was pretty cool. Some absolute legend put a kitty poster and a cuttlefish egg into this one, both of which I will cherish forever. As you can see how very excited I was about it here. Of course, I used the plushie and the toy Aurora to decorate my bedside, as any true player of culture would. And then, equipped with a ton of resources, I was ready for the big mission. The plan was essentially the same as what I had done with the Lost River. Swim down into the lava zone, establish a tiny base in a place I had scouted out earlier, and then use that to reach the lava castle and get some kyanite. That was before I realized I'd forgotten all of the purple tablets, and I had to make a quick run back for them. Now, in the Lost River base, I had everything. You can see my inventory is filled to the brim, and I was ready to go, so, you know, I hopped into the prawn and set off. First part of the plan was easy. I slipped past the Ghost Leviathan, I made my way deeper into the river itself, and then I was planning to sort of park here on the edge of the ghost tree. But as you can see, that wasn't really working. The prawn kept sliding down, and I was terrified that it would break on me. So I got an even crazier idea. I decided to Spider-Man across the ceiling and land the prawn suit on the ghost tree itself. This would keep me just safe of its crash depth, and would possibly let me explore further. Good plan, yeah? But it wasn't. Yeah, that's not nice. So what's the problem? Well, in this mod, water pressure is something you have to contend with, and below a certain depth, even my reinforced diving suit was not enough. So what do? Well, I quickly retreated back with my tail between my legs, and I had to come up with something new. Doing a bit of online research revealed that you can get a reinforced diving suit Mark II by scanning a river prowler. Now, this shouldn't be a big deal, so I hopped back into a prawn. I found a willing participant. I gently persuaded him to let me scan him. Then I gave him a good jolly scan, and just like that, I had the Mark I suit blueprint. To craft the blueprint, you need the scales from this thing as well, so I found a different willing participant and gently persuaded him to give up some scales. And with all of that in my inventory, I was able to craft the Mark II reinforced diving suit. Now this bad boy would let me go deep enough to come back to the ghost tree and execute my plan. Now this felt very similar to that one trip down to the Lost River, except way more terrifying. Swimming from the ghost tree at first was safe, no problem. But as soon as I started dipping into the lava corridor, I was suddenly surrounded by warpers. But I decided to just kind of stick to the ceiling and hope for the best. Before long, I was right at the edge of the oh my god, that thing wants to kill me. Before long, I was at the place I had scouted at earlier, built a base, a small bioreactor inside, and I was safe. And very happy, as you can see. I waited here just long enough to regenerate some oxygen, and right back I went. Now this was the part I was the most scared of. This mod increases the hostility of all creatures. That also includes the sea dragon. There are 2 sea dragons in the inactive lava zone, and let me tell you, I did not want to tango with either of them. I saw one out of the corner of my eye, and decided to just really hug the edge of the lava castle, hoping for the best. Luckily for me, I somehow managed to sneak in without being attacked, and then, before I ran out of oxygen, I made it into the thermal plant, which was probably one of the most relieving moments of this run in general. Like, I was terrified down here. Luckily, I had a plan. I went down and unlocked the teleporter here, which actually links to the massive gun on the surface, very close to my surface base. Using a purple tablet, I unlocked the blue tablet in here, which I would need to reach the primary containment facility. And then I went down and gathered all the blueprints, such as the ones for the ion batteries and such. Now, skipping ahead, I made it back to my surface base using the teleporter, and then I had to, of course, go rescue my prawn suit. So here you can see me actually diving all the way from the surface down into my Lost River base. Now this might seem crazy, but I'd already done it before, so it wasn't actually even that bad. And after refreshing in my Lost River base, I took another swim with my trusty sea glide all the way to Beef Jerky that had luckily waited for me right on the Ghost Leviathan egg on the ghost tree, which is pretty epic, I have to say. And now we really were in business. I managed to bring my rescued prawn ship all the way back to my base, and then I took it with me as some mobile storage to go gather some kyanite. It was terrifying swimming inside the lava castle, hearing the dragons roaring in the distance, but luckily I knew I was relatively safe in here. I grabbed everything I could, and then I got a really bad idea. You see, to get the MK3 of the reinforced diving suit that would let me go all the way down into the primary containment facility, I would need to attack a lava lizard. Now, I saw one just outside of the lava castle, but I was terrified to go get it because a dragon could appear around the corner literally any second. I kept looking around, super nervous, and then at some point I just said, alright, this is my chance. I swam out into the open, sliced him a few more times than was probably necessary. I just really wanted to make sure I never have to do this again, and somehow managed to make it back into the lava castle before the sea dragon decided to actually use me as beef jerky. Back on the surface, I was able to use all of these materials to get the Mark III reinforced diving suit, and then with some more resources, I got the MK1 module for the prawn, giving me the sweet 1300 meters of crush depth. And finally, using the remaining kyanite, I crafted the MK2 version, giving me 1700 meters, which would let me go all the way down to their primary containment facility. And picking right where we left off, next on my radar was a ton of crafting, starting with the Cyclops. Now, why the Cyclops specifically is because we would need the builder inside of it to craft a part for the Neptune rocket. Gathering resources for this thing took me to a few interesting biomes, such as the underwater islands, for example, where I
reduced the bone shark population a bit.
But alas, before too long, I had everything to build the massive sub, and as you can see, I was very excited about it. Of course, vehicles don't get built with power cells here, so this thing was completely dark, and I wouldn't really be powering it up right now anyways, but it was nice to have it already. Now, next up on the list, I thought it would be time to go down into the lava zone, so I jumped into creative and spent a bit of time planning out the route. I specifically looked for landmarks so I would take the shortest possible path and avoid the sea dragons as much as possible. But then, on a whim, I decided to start building the Neptune rocket instead. I built myself another blue tablet because I would need 2 for the primary containment facility, and then I gathered everything for the Neptune launch platform. I told you guys this would be crafting galore. Once the thing was built, I took a look at the crafting requirements, and the gantry was actually not too bad, so I gathered all the resources and promptly built it. As you can imagine, I'm skipping through big chunks of farming here, but you wouldn't really want to see those anyways. At this point, I was also very happy that I crafted the drill arm, since it allowed me to get stuff in bulk, such as lithium for example, that I needed a ton of for plasteel ingots. And just like that, the Neptune boosters were built. Now at this point, I thought the only way to proceed, because I needed a ton of iron cubes, was to go down to the Emperor. So I packed everything and hopped into the bronze suit. I took it all the way through the enforcement platform, double checked that I have everything before the teleporter, and right after teleporting I realized there's a massive pile of iron cubes in the facility inside the lava castle. So I could just get that, and there would be no need to go down to the Emperor, which was kind of something I was trying to delay as much as possible because I was really scared of it. You know, recording this really made me realize how great the prawn suit is for gathering resources. I mean, I think the footage right now is really demonstrating. After a bit of farming, those iron cells were a pain, I had the fuel reserve ready. Now the cockpit would be next, and for this, you see I needed the shield gen from a Cyclops. This is why I built the sub. Using a power cell from my prawn suit, I was able to temporarily power the Cyclops to check for the crafting requirements. It wasn't too bad, so before long, I was able to make me a shield gen, and obviously take my power cell back. With that, I had everything to build the cockpit, and as you can see, I'm very excited because this has been the biggest grind in the game by far. But here it is, the Neptune rocket in its full glory, completed. Of course, I had to go in and double check that everything was in order, and you know, it was. But now there truly was no more delaying it. I charged everything as much as it could be charged, took all of the stuff that I would need, and boarded the prawn suit for probably the most dangerous trip of the entire game so far. I once again walked it all the way through the enforcement platform building, right down into the teleporter room, and then as I approached the door that exits the lava castle, let me tell you, my butt cheeks were clenched to their maximum potential. Very carefully, I peered outside the hole, trying to listen for the sea dragon or, you know, see a hint of its tentacle in the distance. But when I couldn't see or hear anything, I figured, this is it, this is my chance. So I launched off already knowing exactly where to go, and luckily, I didn't see a single dragon here. Unluckily, the active part of the lava zone was next. Now I knew that here I just needed to get lucky with the position of the dragon. So as soon as I saw it, sort of facing away from me, I knew this was my one and only. This was the best shot I was gonna get. This area is already super small, so I landed down on the lava, used the technique to propel myself across the bottom of it, and luckily, somehow, despite their heightened aggression, the sea dragon did not notice me as I flung myself into the primary facility. And my goodness, what a relief that was. I unlocked it with a blue tablet, and then unlocked the weighted Sea Emperor. Now, using the prawn suit and a bunch of iron cubes, I unlocked all the 4 teleporters around the place. Of course, when I ran out, I simply drilled some more from the never-ending platform in the middle. And then, with all the teleporters powered up, it was time to go see Mommy Emperor. I said hi to her telepathically, and then hopped right off to see the unhatched ones. I powered up the incubator, and the Sea Emperor very graciously cleared out the teleporter for me. I somehow managed to drain 84 energy from my prawn suit by exiting it, which is lovely, but I was able to take the teleporter out, and I finally had the recipe for the hatching enzymes. Now, I'm sure you know this, but the 4 teleporters around the place actually lead you to 4 of the places you need to get the plants for the enzymes, so I took full advantage of that. Now, first on our list was the Lost River, and you can see the ghost right there, but at this point, I'd been battling this planet for so long that even a charging ghost did not really spook me too much. It did make things a little annoying, so I had to stasis rifle him and try again. But luckily, I was able to get the ghost weed just fine and return back safely. The remaining plants were a lot less of a hassle, so I got all of them, and of course, the sea crown can be found at the bottom of the Emperor's tank, so I got that one too. Now with all of these resources, I returned back to home base, crafted the enzymes, and then went right back to the Emperor's tank, and with the enzymes equipped, I finally hatched the baby Emperors. Now I watched the happy family together for a little bit before exiting out through the teleporter, and curing myself with some sweet Enzyme 42. Since I was already by the gun, this was a perfect opportunity to disable that bad boy. Ow, thanks. And alas, this was it. Strangely, it felt a bit bittersweet returning to my base, where I ate some lantern fruit and laid down for the last nap on planet 4546b. The next morning, I took the elevator up into my rocket, activated all of the necessary systems. I prepped a time capsule with a picture of my base, the kitty poster, some iron cubes, and a nice motivational message. And last, with everything ready, I sat down into the captain's chair. We blasted off. And that, my friends, was a full playthrough of Subnautica Deathrun 2.0. And my goodness, what a playthrough it has been. Now, this is the end of the playthrough. So if you guys were only interested in seeing me get through this game somehow, with this incredibly difficult mod, this is it. I really hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in the next one. But if you're interested in playing it yourself, stick around for a bit longer, because here I will give sort of some of my final closing thoughts, opinions, as well as some advice on, if you're going to play this mod yourself, what you should change, what you should keep, and in general what I thought about the whole experience. Now, let's get through the basics first. Did I enjoy the mod? Heck yes. I thought this was absolutely amazing, and honestly, this was probably the most fun I've had with a playthrough ever since the no water run. It really forced me to sort of go back to the basics, use a ton of the mechanics in Subnautica that I wouldn't really use on a regular playthrough, and sort of have to relearn where to find everything and how to really optimize my survival on the planet. Now that said, as amazing as I think this mod is, if I was to do this again, or if you are going to try it yourself and you're looking for some advice, I would recommend some modifications to make the experience a bit more fun and less frustrating. And I think the biggest one I have to start with right away, as iconic as it is to the mod, the nitrogen accumulation in your blood when you surface is a massive pain. Sure, it is a nice novelty at the very start, but later in the game it becomes such a nightmare to always have to slowly ascend by, tapping your spacebar instead of just holding it, and then waiting until that meter goes down so you can do it all over again. It takes forever and it gets incredibly tedious. So realistically, if I was to do this again, that is the first thing that would probably realistically be getting turned off. And the other one, if I had to pick out anything, would probably be the radiation, HUD overlay. I mean, it looks okay during the night when the radiation is lower, but as the radiation levels increase, even with the suit on, it becomes so freaking bright on your screen and so obstructive that, especially at night, which you're going to be spending a lot of time at night, you will not be able to see a darn thing. So if anything, I would probably make that UI, a bit less opaque, or make the effects a lot less intense, just so your enjoyment of the game can be a bit higher. But to be honest, those are about the only changes I would be making to the mod. So anyways, massive recommendations for me. I had a ton of fun playing this, and I really hope you guys had a ton of watching it as well. The link to the mod is of course down in the description. And with that, I want to thank you all so much for watching, and if you enjoyed, maybe consider leaving a like, commenting, or subscribing. All of those would be very much appreciated. With that, I want to wish you all a beautiful rest of the day, and I'll see you in whatever next video I make. Bye bye.